Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Sara Connell here for our next author success interview. I'm so excited for you all to meet our guest today, the amazing and wonderful and talented Arthur Lieber. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Arthur, and then we're going to dive right into Arthur's journey because his book comes out in, Arthur, it's like a matter of weeks at this point. It's so close. So really exciting to get to talk at this point in the journey. And let me just tell you a little bit about Arthur. He is a self-described introvert who loves politics, but not the circus part. How many of us can relate? He wants to put his politics to be thoughtful and focused on moving the rock up the hill, i.e., helping us become a better society 1 year at a time, 1 decade at a time, 1 generation at a time. In 1974, he co-founded Crossroads School in St. Louis, and in 1992, co-founded, and Arthur, how do you pronounce, I want to make sure I pronounce Civitas, good. That was my guess, but I want to make sure. An educational non-for-profit. In 2010 and 2014, Arthur ran for Congress from Missouri's 2nd District. So this is really exciting because he has insider knowledge. And you can find out much more about Arthur at www.politicalintroverts.com, which is also the topic of Arthur's upcoming book, which we're really excited to talk about today. Welcome, Arthur.
Sara, thank you so much for the interview. Everything else you've done for me as well.
Well, it's been such an absolute honor and joy to work together. I've had the privilege, along with Mary Nelligan, our editor, working with Arthur on his book. And I'm really excited to dive into the book itself. But I also am curious if you'd share with everyone, Arthur, did you always know that you would run for politics and found a not-for-profit and author books? Was that always something you kind of knew was on the horizon?
No, I went to college in Washington, D.C. at American University. The first time I went to D.C. was in March of 1963. Quite a contrast. We had a president then by the name of John F. Kennedy, quite a contrast from today. And the combination of him being in office and for the first time seeing these remarkable buildings where you had a Department of Justice that really worked, Department of State, Health, Education, and Welfare. It was just exciting. I mean, when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to baseball games, and the stadium then was in North St. Louis, which was primarily African-American, poor. And I think that was kind of the genesis of me saying there's something wrong with this picture. We need to try to promote more equity and equality. And so when I got to DC, I thought, well, this is the place where that can happen. And when I went to college there, I thought, you know, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, domestic, international, whatever, but somehow I wanted to be there. Well, Vietnam was going on, and I learned that if you got a teaching job in an inner city, that you could get an automatic deferment from the draft. So I moved back to St. Louis, and in the 1969-70 school year, started teaching in the St. Louis public schools, and I've got a portion of the book talking about some of the bizarre things that happened as I was teaching in St. Louis public schools.
Yeah. Amazing. It's amazing to see the journey, right? Because I'm always fascinated by, you know, there are some people at a young age who sort of say, this is my path. And then they, you know, go that path. And then most people I've interviewed and coached anyway, it's been contained a lot more surprises than that. And, you know, sort of one thing leads us to the next thing, like, you know, being in DC led you to teaching, and teaching has led you to the not-for-profits, running for office. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming book. So, I hope you all go and read this book. It's so fantastic what Arthur brings in terms of his you know, unique perspective as someone who's actually run for office and been involved in politics, involved in education. And you do such a great job, I think, of talking big picture about like some major reform that you see needed in order for us to make the changes we want to see in our country, but also some really specific things that people can do in this upcoming election. And I'm curious, do you want to share a little bit what inspired you to write? It's a lot to write a book. It's a lot of work. So what made you say, I'm going for it with this one?
Well, you know, one of the things I'm not real thrilled about is this whole process of getting older, and but I don't like to bitch and moan about it. But what I recognize is that Um, you know, when in 1974, that was the year that we started Crossroads School, a new school. It also was the year that Richard Nixon was forced to resign. And the politics of that time were so distressing, so depressing, and the American people really being hoodwinked by somebody who said he wasn't a crook, but other people might interpret it differently. How was it that the American people would allow someone like that to become their leader? Well, here we are many years later, and we have Donald Trump as our president.
Right.
And what's the difference? If there is a difference, it's worse. So that really is what gave me the incentive to want to write the book.
Yeah.
That combined with the fact that when we look at trying to address political problems, societal problems, we often think in terms of what can we do in the next day, what can we do in the next week, month, year, and it's not going to change that way. You know, we're talking about long-term change, incremental steps that lead us in a direction where hopefully there's significant change. That ties right in with another point in the book, that being that we need to really do an overhaul of our schools. We can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I really feel that instead of saying, well, let's just get rid of the Electoral College, which I think would be a tremendous step, but beyond that, we have to find a way to help the voting populace have more of a sense of preserving the common good for all of us. Still protecting individual rights. For those people who want to have their guns, I suppose under reasonable circumstances you can. But more important is a common good, that we're here to try to protect one another and move forward, and particularly deal with issues of inequality. So that is all part of why I wanted to write this book. I did write this book.
Yes, I know it's done, and it's so exciting that it's now, Arthur's launching January 21st, and we always talk about launching on Tuesdays is always like very powerful. So and in 2020 with this new election year, it's just absolutely pivotal timing. Do you want to just share just what a political introvert is? Because I realize that'll give people a little bit of a sense of your kind of lens into the book, and then we'll move on and talk about how it's been actually doing this process and the joys and pains of it.
I think a political introvert is somebody who really cares about politics, but in many ways finds getting involved to be very distasteful, unpleasant. Because how do we do it? Some of the extreme stuff, like right now you and I are having this conversation on December 3rd, 2019. And not too long ago, President Trump did this, really outrageous thing, mocking Lisa Page, who formerly was in the FBI. And it appeals to a lot of people. I don't think that when he does that, it incentivizes people to think about the issues that we're facing. And I think there are a lot of people who are introverts in the sense that they don't want to be part of the circus. They don't necessarily want to go to rallies. They don't want to be besieged by fundraising requests. They want to think about the issues. They want to try to solve them. They want to have conversations with candidates, conversations with other voters. But they don't want it to be like a prom. They don't want it to be like a homecoming. They don't want it to be like any, college football game, anything like that. They want it to be as if people are just having conversations, talking things through, and hopefully you get to a point where on difficult issues you can reach consensus and try to bring about change. That may cause some people to raise their eyes and say, this is really bizarre, it's never going to happen. But I stand by it because, as I said, I think we're talking about generational change. So little by little, particularly as we have more empathetic teachers working with students, we can hopefully get to a point where instead of kids, just thinking about my team and whether that's their high school team or whether it's their country or their political party or whatever, instead we're thinking about the common good, all of our team.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I know that resonates deeply with me. And I'm interested for those of you listening to share, what comes up for you around this. And if you identify as a political introvert, I definitely do. And I never heard, Arthur created this term and this dialogue that we get to have. So it's been really, really illuminating for me to take the journey with you, Arthur, and learn from you and your experience. And so what's been the best part for you about writing this book, and what's happened so far as you kind of look on the horizon of your launch?
This is going to be counter to some popular opinion, because to me the best part was when we had a focus group made up of 8 people. The 8 people, they were selected because A, they were self-defined introverts. B, they had at least 2 years of post-secondary college. Most of them had 4 years. And C, they had not voted in the last 2 presidential elections, 2016 and 2012. So why do people who see themselves as introverts, who have been fairly well educated, why do they not vote? And we met for about an hour and a half. I think that for many of these people, it's just the system is just so distasteful. A lot of people would think they don't vote because they're apathetic. That may be part of it, but there are other components, like the system doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense. How could you create something as bizarre as the Electoral College? Well, you could, if it was the late 1700s and you were trying to patch something together with different interests, but it does not reflect democracy as we want to know it now. When we have a system right now where one of 2 senators from the state of Kentucky can block all legislation in one of the 2 chambers of Congress. He can do it on his own, and we don't even talk about, not that we should get rid of Mitch McConnell, but we're talking about, look, there are 100 members in the Senate. Why can't they all have equal power? Why do we have to have a majority leader who is the traffic cop on everything that happens there? Why is it that committee chairs can determine who will be called as a witness and who won't? It's real simple with 100. You can have it like a New England town meeting. You can have a democratic process there. All of these things, I think, are part of what turn off a lot of people who would like to think democracy is where you have candidates, you learn about them, and you can vote for them. Right. So, yeah, that was a big part, I think, of the introverts. And I am looking forward to, once we have the advanced copies of the book, I want to contact them and see if they'd like to read the book, and then see if we can get together again. And, obviously there's part of me that wants to nudge them to the point where they would consider voting, Right. In Missouri on March 10th, we have our presidential primary. And, and other elections after that. I'd love to see them get involved, but if they don't, that's okay, because, we're still learning from all the ideas that we're kicking around.
Well, I love what you're talking about, because, and we were going to talk about, has there been a challenge and how you overcame it, in this process. And I think, just to present something you said here that feels really important to me, that as the author, we desire to, most people in this community that I have the privilege of working with, want to make change. They want to write their book to create positive change in the world, to help create a shift, to make some movement, right, in the world. And so I love this. And then ultimately we let it go. Like you put the work out there, you created the focus group, you have the book. And I hope that too. I'll hold that vision, because remind us how many people did not vote in 2016? It's a staggering.
40% of the adult electorate did not vote in 2016. And you can't say there wasn't a choice. Well, right. Some people didn't like Hillary Clinton, but she sure wasn't Donald Trump. You had a choice.
And so think that's how many million, right? Like that's such a huge.
Yeah, that was, I think we had, 45 million.
I think so.
Something like that.
It's
Yeah.
huge. It's a huge number. So,
Yeah.
so what I love this because most of you here, watching this have a mission. Like you're writing to help fulfill part of your calling and mission. And Arthur, you're doing this amazing. If this book helps even, some people vote who didn't vote before, and that helps change the course of our nation. What an amazing thing. And I'm curious, like, has there been a piece of this journey that's felt challenging? And if so, like, what did you do to work through it?
Well, I just want to go back to something you just said, okay?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's enough to get people who have not been voting to vote. Because, a lot of them, if they're not able to put thought into it, if they are doing it because somebody puts pressure on them and says, you got to vote, all that kind of stuff, we don't know how it's a wild card, how those people are going to vote. And we don't know if it's going to help us have a better society or not. So again, that's where I go back to schools in terms of trying to make a change incrementally so that we have kind of a movement going on, more people voting, but they're voting as they become more aware of the issues and what they can do about it.
Yes, such a good point. Thank you for presenting that, right? Because it's not just the vote, it's to become, you talk about you want more compassionate voters, more conscientious voters, people that are going to take the time to read and listen and make a choice that's aligned with their values. And so that's really, and I know that's what you're helping new generations do in the education space.
Absolutely.
So was besides, trying to help 45, million people become empowered around learning about the issues and placing a really conscious vote, any other challenges that you had to overcome in getting to this point?
I think that, the basic research was at times difficult. And I think that so often you get, it's like Wikipedia, some people love it, some people hate it. I think it's really a good place to go, and then you look for something else that can provide, amplification or clarification, whatever. But I think just making sure that I got my facts straight, and I'm sure there are times when I didn't, and I think that's because, there are points that I really wanted to make. And and if I couldn't get all the substantiation that I wanted, I still wanted to throw the ideas out there as possible solutions. Because otherwise, I think, we get, I love to read about politics and about schools and stuff like that. And I find a lot of people who, will talk about the current problems that we have and kind of knee-jerk solutions. But I don't see people really looking in terms of long-range solutions and looking at systemic problems, and that's something that I tried to do.
Yeah, and again, because we don't need band-aids at this point,
No.
We need to like heal at the root. I so agree. So, Arthur, one of the things I love that you did with this book that sometimes is intimidating to authors or they feel overwhelmed by the idea is that you became really intentional about people that you were interested in endorsing your book. And so if any of you are watching and thinking about this, an endorsement, if you read a book and you see someone at the top wrote to you, a must read, the best book of the century or whatever, you have these blurbs, right, that other authors, influencers, experts contribute to a book that they like. And it's a way to give, it's a testimonial, right? It's a rave review that happens before the book comes out. So I just would love to hear you share, why were endorsements important to you and how did you go about thinking of the people that you wanted, and I know we worked as a team to reach out to those people, but what I'd love to just hear you talk to get people's minds going about endorsements.
So I'm going to have to give you a circuitous answer to this.
Okay, cool.
One of the people, and he doesn't know this, who really inspired me to want to write this book is a gentleman by the name of Thomas Frank. He grew up in Kansas City, and he's in Maryland, outside of Washington now. And he wrote, I think, a really compelling book, What's the Matter with Kansas, about where Kansas got all hung up on social issues and not economic issues. Then he wrote a book called Listen Liberal, in which he really took liberals to task in a lot of ways by being rather superficial. Well, part of that superficiality is where you get your name plastered all over everything. It's like, with a law firm, you see on the left side, everybody's name there. A nonprofit, everybody's name is there. If you're going to have an invitation to a political rally, you get your name on there if you pay the money to be there. And I find that to be somewhat offensive, and I find it to be something that, again, for a lot of introverts, it's not a game that they like to play. They don't want to play the name game like that. So at the same time, I'm familiar with how books are marketed, and I'm aware of the fact that if you can get endorsements, it'll be really helpful. And so I think I got some very good people. Sheila Crumbles, Center for Responsive Politics, OpenSecrets.org, John Sawyer from the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, Rocco Landesman, who is a retired Broadway producer, and he was Obama's first commissioner for the National Endowment for the Arts, and some other fine people. But when I was talking in the body of the book about Democrats who like to have names plastered all over the place, I put in there what I called it, I think I called it a hypocrisy alert.
Yeah.
Because here I was doing the same damn thing.
Sure.
So I'm by having the endorsements. So I'm of a mixed mind. I'm glad to have the endorsements, but I don't want to be defined by them.
Yes, that's such a great point. And I think that's where we can, I think intention is a big part, and something that I know about you, Arthur, from the gift of working with you, is that your come from in this book is from a place of true service, is what I experience. This is how I experience you. Like you really want to make a difference. And I think when we think about endorsements, if it's an ego ride, right, that's a very different energy. If it's just, I want famous people to say I'm great, like that's a very different desire. Those of us that are introverted, we actually don't, that's not even the pull, right? It's not. Right. And so I love the hypocrisy alert. Like we can call ourselves on it, right? And that this is about reaching more people, because the truth is that endorsements help more people pick up the book. They see someone's name that they recognize. So the way that I love that you worked through the resistance and the concern about hypocrisy to ultimately get this book in more people's hands. And so for any of you watching who feel intimidated by endorsement, Arthur just really took some deep thought. I think, who are the people that really align with this message? Who are the people that have been inspirations to me and helped me, even motivated and inspired me to want to write this book? And then we reach out to them. So my first episode, we make the list and then we reach out, and a lot of them said yes, which is so exciting. And so I definitely think of it, I don't think of it as hypocritical. I think of it as, this is going to help more people find your book. And I'm all for that for authors. So
absolutely. I mean, it's a conundrum, and we can't always please all people or all interests.
Of course. Right. Well, I'm really happy for you, because it is a big deal to get that many endorsements and some names that were really meaningful to you and very, aligned and heartfelt. And I do believe it will, like I said, get the book in more people's hands, get them to open it up. So congratulations. Is there any last thought, idea, message you want to share to anyone watching who might be at that point of like, am I going to go for it and do my book? I'm not sure.
Well, two things. First, obviously, I wouldn't be here doing this interview with you if it wasn't for you and your wonderful staff. I mean, in March, I came to Chicago and met with you and Mary, and it was really unusual for me because I had ideas for the book, but I was just at a block. I did not know where to go. And over the course of 3 hours, we had such good discussion, such good organizational work that, it set me off and really energized me and gave me focus. So, and then working with Mary on a regular basis with the editing and with you all the way through, it just made a tremendous difference. And it gives me a sense that, I really have put together something that I hope is of quality. So, the other question, and anything else that I'd want to say to aspiring authors or whatever?
Yeah, if someone is sort of like, I know I have this book in me, or I know I want to get this message out, but it's a lot. And, there's all those fears that come up and legitimate time concerns and other things we have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think the term writer's block is very real. And sometimes you can work yourself out of it. I've done that before. And then there are other times where it's like, you need to be shook a little. And I don't mean, something really, traumatic or anything like that. I just mean talking with different people. For me, it came with talking with you and Mary and getting a perspective that I hadn't otherwise had. So, I mean, I know a lot of people who write really are very secretive and private about it. And I can understand that because it's a very personal thing.
Mhm.
But I think there are times when if you can sit down with somebody and just kind of have a brain dump and, you know, you've spread all this stuff out on the table and let somebody else work with you in terms of trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I agree. And that was my path as a writer, right? A lot of you know my story. I got all the way up till I was kind of almost ready to do it, and then I froze. So it really helped me to have a coach and a team. And I'm so honored that we got to be that team with you and this book, and so excited for all that's going to come in January and beyond. So everyone, just, we're wishing you well, wishing you such positive impact with this work, and so excited for the next chapter, which is coming right up.
Looking forward to it, very much so.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Here we go.